Hey folks, and welcome. Hopefully you saw rigging part 1, rigging part 2, and now you're here for some animation. So we're going to be taking all of the controls that Friddle did with the rig, and he's going to animate the flaps, he's going to animate the engine exhaust opening and closing, and the ship itself landing. So let's do it.
Hi. In this video I'm going to be doing a short little animation of this spaceship coming in for a landing. I'm going to keep it super simple so that I can explain everything I'm doing. I've been animating for about 16 years now, and one thing I can say for certain is that my workflow in animation has changed more times than I can remember. Many different animators animate many different ways, and there's no real and right way to do something. There's obviously good principles to follow, there's good workflow to follow and stuff, good rules to stick by. But ultimately, you kind of develop a workflow that works for you. In this case, we're going to be animating like a spaceship, which is, I'm going to take in a little bit more of a VFX type approach. So I'm not going to be working in stepped, meaning stepped usually is with a character. You'll set a keyframe there. You'll figure out, okay, the next pose is going to be there, and you're kind of like just stepping through the whole animation. So you'll create the whole thing all the way till the end, and you're knowing exactly what's going to happen, and then you start smoothing it out and go from there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep everything smoothed so I can see the movement of the ship happening. I'm going to try and stick to 74 frames, because also in a production pipeline, sometimes if the edit's already been created, you're kind of given a shot length, and you need to make sure that the intent of that shot is portrayed in that length. Quick check, I'm animating in 24 FPS. You definitely want to make sure that when you're freelancing, you're keeping an eye on that, because you don't want to be animating at the wrong frame rate and then you deliver it to your client and they said they wanted it at 24 FPS or 30 FPS and you did it wrong, because then you're going to have a lot of stuff to fix up. You can also double check that if you click on that little running man icon there. It says settings, and under settings time slider you can see there it says 24 FPS. So, alright, let's figure this out. I don't want to keep on selecting the geometry accidentally, so I'm just gonna click that little icon there. Meaning now I can't select the geometry, I can only select the controls. So for another tip is to also keep saving. I just press Ctrl S, I've already set up my save. So Maya crashes, any animation software crashes and stuff. So if you're going to be committing to something and you're on a deadline, you want to make sure you're saving. It's going to save you a world of pain. Trust me, I've sat many nights working through the night to try and make up for animation I lost because I didn't save correctly. Alright, so I'm going to try and aim and have this guy coming in for a landing and maybe touch down, like, let's aim for frame 50. So he lands at frame 50, which is going to be here. And then I'm going to go... Oh, right. What I did there was I pressed S to set that keyframe. You guys will see I've also got auto keys turned on here. I like auto key. A lot of animators don't like auto key. It basically just means that if I take the ship, if I go to frame 38 and I push the ship up, it automatically sets a new keyframe there. I'm just going to undo that. So I'm going to go to the first frame. It is caching right now. I don't think I really need that because it is also prone to making Maya crash sometimes, and I think for the purposes of this video I prefer it to not crash. So I'm just going to turn that off. I think we'll be okay, it's not like the ship is very heavy. So I'm going to go to about here. Let's see, let's go a little bit higher. So it's going to come from there, it's going to come down and land there. I'm going to make this first pose a little bit more interesting maybe. So it's going to be coming in banked like that. It's going to come down and land. So if you guys remember from the rigging video, I didn't set the landing gear up to work with this control because it's always going to go through the ground like that. I set it up to be with this control. So the little problem I'm going to have now is if I animate this guy up until here and then I continue the movement of this guy to kind of create that bounce, it's it's gonna be very hard for me to not get this little pause there. I can try and match them up, set both of them to linear maybe. No, it's just worse. It's just worse. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to show you guys a little hack. This is just, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like for every specific situation, you're going to come up with a specific solution. So for now, I'm going to ignore this control. I'm just going to delete that key. And I'm just going to stick with this control for now. And let's see. So let's say it's going to land there. And it's going to bounce down for the impact to about here. Maybe bounce that way a little bit, meaning that here it's going to land slightly, kind of like that. Bounces down. So I want the ship to look nice and heavy when it lands. So I'll maybe also put a little bit, tiny little bit more weight on the front. And then instead of it just immediately starting to bounce back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this keyframe and I'm going to copy it over to like say 1, 2, 3 frames. So now this section is exactly the same. There's nothing happening there, which we obviously don't want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Windows, Animation, Graph Editor. And then in here, I can see the flat tangent. So I'm just going to take this and move that down there. And I'm just going to do a quick save. And if you guys bear with me, let me just double check I'm actually recording. I am recording. I'm sorry about that. Alright, so there's a little bounce that happens there. And let's see the other tangents. So also I don't want that flat one there. I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit. And same thing for the Z. Just going to do that. The same thing for the Y. Translate. Is there anything? Nothing really too concerning on the Z because he is stopping. He's not moving forward anymore. And he's not moving sideways anymore. So alright. So he's bouncing down with the impact. Not bouncing yet, and then we want him to settle back, let's say to maybe about frame 70. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to frame 70. I'm just going to set this to 0. So it's quite a big bounce back. I don't think we're going to want that much, but let's just go with it for now. And I think all the way till the end, I just kind of want like a tiny little bit more settle. So it's going to bounce up and then settle a little bit down again. So I'm just going to take maybe this value at frame 68 and I'm going to middle mouse drag all the way to frame 74 and I'm going to set a keyframe. So now it's got that value, it's got over there. So it's just giving me that little bit of movement there for free basically. Super quick way to do that. So like I said, I think this is too much bounce upwards. So I'm going to go Animation, Graph Editor. And yeah, it's just too much. So I'm just going to select that bounce there and I'm going to bring it back to like maybe something like that. Yeah, I think that'll work. I think that'll be a bit better. Let's see what we have so far. So got it coming in for a landing. Okay, so you guys can see it's kind of like sloping, speeding up into the movement here. So right at the beginning it's quite slow. That is because the tangent is set to an auto tangent, which is kind of like sloping in the beginning, speeds up and smooths out again. So again, gonna go Window, Animation, Graph Editor. Doesn't matter what software you're animating in, you're always going to be dealing with graph editors, and it's good to get used to it. Even in, I think, After Effects and everything, you have graph editors if you're doing animation. So I'm just going to select all the first keys and I'm going to set it to linear. There you go. So it's already at speed in the beginning, and it lands. And I'm going to do a save. All right. What do we have? That's so. Let's see if we can make this a little bit more interesting. So it's a little bit too smooth, like kind of like translating from there to there. So let's see, we speed it up a little bit in the beginning, and then it starts slowing down. So I'm going to take maybe this value at 30 and push it back to about 22 and keyframe it. And I'm going to keep the bank a little bit longer. Let's maybe try that. Let's try that. Something like that. So it's overcompensating a little bit. And then fans. Let's try that. Okay, it's a bit jerky right now. I'm not loving that movement. So you guys will see I'm kind of finding my way through this. There's no really connected dots way of animating. It's a little bit like drawing or sculpting. You have to kind of like feel your way through it. So I know what I want to achieve. So that's what I'm going to go for. But yeah, there's no easy way tutorial to kind of like say, oh, I wanted to animate this, I'll just look at how that's done and I'll do it that way. I have to kind of come up with solutions myself. Feels like I should be coming in at an angle a little bit more. Yeah. And then it's probably hitting in the X a little bit too hard there. So I'm just gonna have a look at the X. That's right. So I'm just gonna smooth it out a little bit and make sure that's still on a linear. Is everything still on linear? Yes, it is. Okay, so I'm thinking that my landing's a little bit soft here. So I'm just going to take these keyframes and move it back. So I want this to be a little bit harder, but this section is bugging me. Just see what's going on there. It's a bit messy. I don't think I need this key. I'm going to delete that key. And it's on the ground there, so it's probably okay. I can probably add like a little bit of slide as he lands. Just a tiny little bit. Right. It's coming along. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is looking at this landing gear. We made a touchdown at frame 50, so I'm just going to key this landing gear at frame 50 because that's definitely where we want it to be in the right position. I can probably just pose it already, and I'll just do this, key it, and take this guy. The ground's a little bit uneven, which is good, so it makes it a little bit more interesting. Key that guy, and this we can just push up a little bit. It should be good. Okay, so that's where they're going to end up, and I think we want them fully extended, like, let's say like around here by frame 34. I don't really like it when they're just this flat, it's not very interesting. So I'm just gonna maybe put them in like that. Yeah, we'll just do something like this. And then I'm gonna go back to, let's say they're out by around frame 26, and at frame, let's say frame 8, they're kind of like tucked in. probably push them up a little bit more. And this guy will be up in there. So select all these controls. Alright, so they're tucked in there, they're coming out, and lands. So obviously they're still going through the ground. And then I've got a plan. I'm hoping my plan works out. So let's see, what else can we do so long? Alright, so let's move ahead of my plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a locator. Create locator. And if I scale it up, oh, it's not active. Turn on locators. There you can see it. So I've got this locator here. And I'm going to select the master control and shift select the locator. And I'm going to go to animation tab and say constraint parent options. So I'm going to turn off this maintain offset because I want the locator to snap to the master controls pivot. Apply, so it snaps there. So now just with the locator selected, it's following the master control nicely. So I'm going to say edit keys, bake simulation. So it's baking out all the keys for that locator. And that means I can now go into the outliner. There we've got the constraint and that little drop down. I'm just going to delete that. And it's still got all these keys in there, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to go to frame 50 and I'm just going to make double sure this guy's get translate and rotate keyed. And I'm just going to delete all of its keys after frame 50. So nothing's happening there. But we've still got it all on this locator. So I'm going to select the locator and select the control. And this time I'm going to make sure maintain offset is turned on because I don't want this control to move. I'm going to hit apply. So now that bouncing movement is on that control. Problem is it's now following that locator as well as the master control. So we'll see there's a bit of like funkiness where it's drifting away from the control. It's not too bad, but I don't like it. So I'm going to go to frame 50 and I'm going to make sure that this constraint is on at frame 50. So if I select this control that's now been constrained and I click on the parent constraint, I can see it's constrained to that locator there and it's on a value of 1. So I'm just going to select that and I'm going to right click it and say key. And then I'm going to go to frame 49 and just turn it off. So good. So there's a little bit of a pause that I'm not loving right now. Let's see if I take this key and I change it to linear. What do we get? Alright. It's getting a bit better. Yeah. That could work. So I've still, if I want to move this, it's now all on the locator. So let's just double check what's happening at frame 51, graph editor. I think I can improve that movement a little bit more. So make this linear, so make sure it's nice and yeah. If I did want it to edit this movement, like the bounce or something further, it's now obviously it's a bit inconvenient because it's all baked out onto all these keys. But it's kind of the same way we work with motion capture data sometimes. So if I want to make this bounce smaller, let me just make this window bigger. So I've got this bounce here. What I would do is I would select everything from, like, say this keyframe, press R, and I would just scale that movement smaller. So let's say we scale it a little bit smaller. And now, there we go. Alright. So I'm going to leave that for there for now. I think the ship can start banking out a little bit, or flattening out a little bit sooner. Once I can start adding a little bit more keys for a bit more detail. Kind of depends on what style you're animating. If it's for like a hyperreal trailer or something, then obviously you want as much like little noise and turbulence in there as possible to make it look realistic. If it's something a little bit more stylized, then obviously it's not such a big concern. Just have a look at the graph editor as well, see if there's nothing that stands out. And let's see what we can do with this guy. Probably close the outliner. And I think I'm going to smooth out this translate or rotate X a little bit. Before I forget, so obviously we did rig these engines. So I think like from around frame 54, I want them to start like spinning less. It's going to be really hard for us to actually see them spinning, but I wonder if there may be an easy way. We can just, for the purposes of this video, see it spinning a bit easier. It's all gray on gray. Maybe just gonna select the faces, and maybe the same on this side. And I'll select a few more. Really part of animation, but this is just going to help you guys see it a little bit more. I'll just say assign new material, just put a Lambert on it, and did I put a Lambert on it? Just do Lambert. Now I put a Lambert on it. Let's just make that red. Back to object. Right, so now if I drag spin, you guys can see it's spinning. Okay, so I'm gonna go to first keyframe, and I'm just gonna put like a massive value on this. And I'm gonna set this key, right click it, set the tangent to linear. So I can obviously make it spin a lot faster, but from here, I want it to just slow down out. I don't want it to stop dead. So I want it to maybe slow down all the way to like frame 72. So we've got 2 frames where we can still read it as being still. So I'm going to go to the window animation graph editor, select both spins. And I'm just going to take this and set it like that. So we've got that little bit of movement running all the way there. Here it's an easy way for me to also like add a lot more movement if I need it. I'll do a play blast. You can do a play blast and then kind of see how much it's reading in the viewport if you want it to be more or less or whatever you need. There we go. I can feel a bit of an awkward drop in the spaceship that I'm not loving. I think it's happening around here. Let's just see. It is probably there. So up until there. What's happening here? That? That's feeling a bit better. Alright. What I could probably also do is blend this movement of the constraint a little bit more. So if I go to window animation graph, select this guy and see if I can find that constraint in here. Yeah, so this is the constraint. It's currently happening over 1 frame. So if I just push it a few frames, of course I can't because it's not weighted to anything else. Sorry, I'm being an idiot. I'm just going to set that back to 1 frame. So yeah, I'm not very happy with this movement. I can feel there's a little bit of a bump in there. I love it when a plan comes together. Let's do this. Auto. Let's delete this. What is that? It feels like it's speeding up right before it's hitting the ground. Where is that coming from? Is it this? It's not in here. Oh, it could be that as well. It's definitely not the Y. Alright, it was that. So I was just kind of like checking both those tangents. That's actually feeling better now. Yeah, happy I did that. Alright. So yeah, that thing I wanted to do with the constraint blending it. Usually if you've got one object constrained to 2 different objects, then you can blend the weight over a few frames. If you've just got one constraint on one object constrained to one object, then you can literally just turn it on and off. You can't blend it over a few frames, so you'll get a big pop. Anyway, so back to the engines. So we did rig up these back guys here. For this purpose, I'll probably just add like a little bit of like detail, like open and close a little bit, and then they open more, stay open a little bit, and then as the ship shuts down, they maybe close down. There we go. And save before we forget. That's the most valuable lesson I can tell you guys in this video, is to keep saving. Alright, this is coming along. It feels like we can keep adding detail to this. We can start thinking about what do we want these guns to do. We want them to be loose, so when it touches the ground, they've got like a little bit of like an overshoot. I don't think that should work. I think it'll just make it look cheap and flimsy. Maybe like as it kind of shuts down, like they do kind of like go into a rest position. So I'll just copy and slowing down there. You can add like maybe like a micro movement, since it's like a big metallic object, so they're kind of like do a little vibrate. Yeah, something like that. You can even go further and then just offset it like a fraction. So maybe hard to see, but that's the kind of stuff you pick up in the playlasts, and it really pays off. So yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty close for, I mean, the intent and purposes for this video. But like I said, we can actually keep on adding detail to this. We can add more turbulence to the ship as it's coming in. And it hits the wind a little bit more. Tries to compensate. I love auto key, because I can just kind of keep doing this kind of thing, and then in case I forget to set my keyframes. And yeah, I really hope you guys can take something from this video. This isn't how I would animate a character. Like I said before, if I was to animate a character, I would like spend a lot of time just on the key poses and make sure that the line of action is reading correctly, the intent of everything, and then I would do another pass, kind of keep skipping through it like this, skip through all the poses and make sure that everything's reading correctly, the performance is gonna come across as I want. And then from there I would go into like putting maybe stuff to auto tangents and start refining from there and smoothing it out. I think I'm gonna wrap this up around here. I'm pretty happy with this. But yeah, like I said, it's like anything else, we can kind of keep working on this forever. And yeah, thank you for watching.